With me, Kate, I gon' pull the trigger.
Baby Keem, Die For My is that those are my two picks for album of the year.
And the Grammy goes to.
The Grammy goes to.
And the Grammy goes to.
Family Ties, Baby Keem and Kendrick Lamar.
When I made this album, it was originally like named after my mom. I was trying to like find that pocket. But then I realized that was just unfair in a way. There's so many people that helped me become who I am today. And you know, some of those stories that I'm telling on the album that you guys seen in the doc or the people that I'm raised around, that's just the half of it. That's not even the half of it if I'm honest.
I saw someone say Baby Keem transformed into Teenager Keem on the album, so that's the crazy theme of this blatant stream of thoughts of this amazing scene painted on the One Day Age tape by Baby Keem. And if you guys haven't been keeping up, in honor of J. Cole teasing retirement with the fall off, I decided to temporarily retire the rapping intros of these videos. But now 2 weeks later, in honor of Baby Keem dropping this amazing project, we're bringing the rhyming back. However, I recorded an intro to this video like 2 days ago because initially this video was going to be about how I thought Drake was going to sabotage the release of this Baby Keem album to kind of get revenge on Kendrick. So we had a whole intro prepared, alright, so I'll play it for you guys. And then we're going to dive into everything Baby Keem, this brand new project, my thoughts on it, a breakdown of it, and a breakdown of the jabs that he may or may not be throwing Drake's way, and the disses that Kendrick Lamar also might be sending. A lot to break down. It's gonna be a monumental video. With that being said, let's get into it. Lawbreeze and Gentlegrams, the nail-polished, petty, putrid play kid petrified of Pusha T and the tiny Tupac twin who taunted with lawsuits trying to launder a loss into a win, the man who took pen-written hits to the chin, and like a bedridden kid who got sick, the rap battle studier hid since the school semester started in September. If you don't remember, he dropped Iceman episode 3 and fell to his knees when he failed to receive a response that wouldn't haunt his frail self-esteem. If you fail to feel what I mean, basically the manufactured mob boss took a loss to Kendrick, then followed it up with music that got lackluster reception and then deflected and disappeared. Yes, he's been gone since summer, but what a bummer. The Iceman might have mustered courage to clock out of his slumber to drop new music specifically to diss Kendrick and the son of the cousin of Kendrick's mother. In a one-word recap, the Spiceman might try to sabotage Baby Keem. Let's unpack what I really mean, but to help me with the algorithmic machine, first please flick those like and subscribe buttons like a bean.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.
Alright, Lawbreeze and Gentlegrams, the rhymes are back, so enjoy them while they're here because they might disappear. Now this is a little bit of an interesting video because for part of it we're going to put some tinfoil hats on. Because there's a lot of subliminals on this new Baby Keem album, but it stretches far beyond just disses on this project. This is a really phenomenal body of work, so we're going to break the entire thing down. But like I mentioned, I started this video like 2 days ago because I thought Drake was about to drop Iceman episode 4 and try and sabotage this entire rollout. And why I thought that? Well, it might be a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, but it's backed by what we've really seen from Lawbriana over the last few years at this point. It's crazy that you can now say the beef was a few years ago.
I study rap battles for a living.
But what's even older than the beef is the amount of time it's been since Baby Keem's last album. And Kendrick definitely found him an amazing successor. And I really think, just off a few listens alone, this is by far Baby Keem's best and most personal album to date. He did a whole live stream where he premiered the album, which we're going to break down. But during that stream, he gave a speech where he reflected on the creative process and the origins behind this album. Now, if you guys don't know much about Baby Keem, I mean, I have a whole documentary on him that I'll leave a link to in the description. But basically, for a long time throughout his early career, he was trying to find his footing and his identity artistically. And it was when he opened up and got more vulnerable on future projects that he really started to reach new heights and give us better and better music.
I learned that you have to be vulnerable in music. That's the only way people are going to gravitate towards what you're saying. If I want to write a song like Honest and I want to have people in the crowd singing back to me, like it has to stem from a vulnerable perspective. I just have to find whatever makes me vulnerable in the moment, how to get over that shyness of expressing that.
This project is no different. However, he's touching on a lot more serious subject matter, a lot more personal details in his private life than he ever has before. And he said that initially he wanted to create this project with his mother in mind. If you guys didn't know, his mother had suffered from a lot of substance abuse problems while she was raising Keem. And because of that, he was embraced and really raised by a lot of other key members of his family, like his aunts, his grandmother. And in realizing that, Keem came to the conclusion that to dedicate this album just to his mother wouldn't be fair, because there were a lot of people who shaped who he is today. And a lot of these stories that he used to be embarrassed about speaking of on record, he now views as empowering.
When I made this album, it was originally like named after my mom. I was trying to like find that pocket. But then I realized that was just unfair in a way. There's so many people that helped me become who I am today. And you know, some of those stories that I'm telling on the album that you guys seen in the doc, or the people that I'm raised around, that's just the half of it. That's not even the half of it, if I'm honest.
And again, he's opening up on this project about the early days of his life like he never has before. And he instead now dedicates this album to the kids out there who get off the school bus and walk home slow. They try to cherish and savor those moments walking home with their friends, because once they get home, it's a whole different world. And I definitely think that this album kind of embodies that feeling or that person, because it takes you exactly into Baby Keem's world when he was facing that same reality. The album's also obviously called Casino, which is a callback to Las Vegas, where Keem spent a lot of his childhood. See, like his second cousin Kendrick, he was born in California, but he moved out to Las Vegas when he was just a kid, and for that reason, him and Kendrick had not been close for a lot of Keem's early years. Again, links in the description for the full breakdown/documentary of Keem's upbringing. And we'll touch on it more as we review the album, but remember, I initially started making this video a few days ago when I had kind of been speculating that Drake may have been planning to put Iceman Episode 4 out tonight in an attempt to sabotage this rollout. And there's a weird history between Drake and Baby Keem, obviously with Kendrick being at the center of it, so I think it's worth discussing with you guys before we actually break down the Keem album. So with Drake, when it comes to Drake, he's been on a calculated mission to win this mythical round 2 against Kendrick Lamar ever since he lost the actual rap battle in May of 2024. If you guys don't remember, ever since like August of 2024, so just a couple months after the beef, Drake and his little minion DJ Big Macus and Akademiks,
those 3 Big Macs are for me!
They've been talking about winning a game 2 or a round 2. They were saying Drake was going to win. Basically, Kendrick won round 1, but Drake was going to win round 2. Now, Akademiks was quick to backtrack to make sure the people knew, you know, Drake wanted no real smoke in an actual second rap battle against Kendrick Lamar. But that left fans to assume that round 2 or game 2 was more of this nuanced, greater conversation about who would have more success as time went on. Did Kendrick really take the crown in round 1, or will Drake still continue to beat him on the sales side, the hit side, the impact side, all that stuff?
I'll put it in the front page, back page, middle page, wherever. Headliners, column 1 or 2, we will win game 2.
Backing off.
We will win game 2.
But game 2, we will win.
Game 2, chat.
Game 2, we will win. If you think Drake finna abandon and forsake, you gotta realize this for the fans right here. You think he gonna let some pussy ass nigga have something over him, his legacy, and his fans? No.
You know, it's only one opportunity to win a championship. No round 2s.
When Drake says round 2, none of that has to do with him about to be beefing with Kendrick.
But I don't know, in my opinion, I kind of thought it was egregious at the time to start talking about round 2s when we saw what you did in round 1, right? We saw how that went. It's like a fighter getting completely knocked out and being like, all right, just wait 4 months and I'm going to come back and try to give the same fighter another swing. I don't really watch boxing or UFC or any of that, so maybe that does happen in UFC. But I just thought it was a little arrogant of Drake to start talking about round 2s 3 months after taking, you know, the worst L in his career. Just keep your chin down, drop your music, stay out the way. But of course, that's exactly the opposite of what Drake did. He was throwing temper tantrums at NBA games. A lot of you guys probably forget.
If you ever put a DeRozan banner up, I'll go up there and pull it down myself. That's the answer to your question. Is that what you're going to ask?
No, I didn't mention that. Well, you know DeRozan and Kyle.
He was commentating a Raptors game live on air and was talking crap about former Raptors player DeMar DeRozan and got banned from commentating on the Toronto Raptors games for an entire year because he used airtime to air out his personal grievances against the player. Then we start seeing him pop up on these gambling live streams with these streamers who have the brains and body compositions of teenagers. And while Drake is live streaming pushing the gambling on the youth, he's talking crap about all his quote-unquote fragile ops.
You have to switch this song though.
It's on a play, you know, so like.
You have to switch this one. We're real sixers. We're real sixers. They're real six side. We don't listen to that.
And I guess round 2 doesn't involve Drake just stepping in the ring with solely Kendrick, because a bunch of random people have been catching absolute strays of freakiness from the phony Montana mob boss. Drake called Rob Markman a goof. He dissed T-Pain. He called Joe Budden a D-sucker. He told Ebro to die slow. He dissed LeBron James on records. He dissed DeMar DeRozan, A$AP Rocky. He had his little gremlin top 5 threatening everybody from Kendrick Lamar to The Weeknd to allegedly some random kid that Drake in top 5 allegedly scammed out of millions of dollars, and the guy has not been seen since.
Because Julian would then claim that he confronted Top 5, who would then give him Drake's number, after which Drake would allegedly begin to send him voice notes where he would allegedly attempt to calm Julian down, with Julian then starting to play DJ Akademiks these alleged voice notes.
You're too eager. Like you're absolutely 100% out of your mind. You look very irrational. You look like you've been there for 20 days. Stop posting so much. If you genuinely want to make money, I have plays for you. I can only involve you in if you stop acting like you're on crack cocaine, bro.
I bring this up to say it's been a hell of a horrible round 2 for La Brianna, but he hasn't gone down without a fight, right? We've gotten probably 50 songs from Drake since this beef ended. We got an entire album between him and PARTYNEXTDOOR. And you guys say all I do is hate on Drake, so I'll give him this. I really like the song Die Trying on that album, because I'm Canadian. I think that's the only reason why. Like, if you were around in like 2005 to 2008, somehow stumbling upon Canadian radio or Much Music, which was like our MTV, then you probably heard a million songs that sounded like this. Some like Natasha Bedingfield, Pocket Full of Sunshine type of stuff. Just a little tangent to say I don't hate everything Drake does, but
I study for a living.
There's a lot of crap he dropped over the last year and a half at this point that really didn't resonate, to the point where like he had this whole rollout for Iceman almost a year ago now. Multiple singles, multiple live streams, which people are now accusing Baby Keem of ripping off, which is a crazy claim. We'll touch on that later. But yeah, he really went all in on trying to make the world forget about the loss that he took by overcompensating and flooding the market with a ton of music and a ton of antics. And one of those antics included this weird pattern, which maybe on the slim chance it could all be a coincidence. I highly doubt it, but maybe I'm just putting on a tinfoil hat here. I don't know. But for a while, every time Kendrick Lamar had a big moment, you would see Drake try and follow it up with a big moment of his own. And then it would bleed into Drake maybe doing the same thing with J. Cole. So what do I mean here? Basically, let's trace back the steps. First, Kendrick announces he'll be performing at the Super Bowl in September 2024. Just a couple weeks later, Drake announces that during that exact same time, he's going to be in Australia on his Anita Max Win Tour. Then about a month and a half later, Kendrick releases GNX. That same week, within like 2-3 days of the album's release, Drake drops the pre-action petition against UMG, Spotify, and iHeartMedia over the release and promotion of Not Like Us. Pre-action petition is basically a legal document you file to the courts before the lawsuit, just to kind of see if your case has any legs to stand on.
I study
lawsuits
for a living.
In that same week, remember this is the week that Kendrick released GNX, Drake also does the live stream with XQC where he's gambling and crapping on his quote-unquote fragile ops. By the time the Grammys and the Super Bowl come around that year, Drake conveniently decides to release his album with PARTYNEXTDOOR about 5 days after Kendrick's Super Bowl performance. He puts out a music video to the lead single off the album, Nokia, and it's a carbon copy visually and aesthetically of Kendrick's Not Like Us music video. Then it's time for Kendrick Lamar to come and bring his stadium tour to Drake's city for 2 nights in a row. Firstly, Drake's little minion Attack Dog Top 5, he shows up to the hotel that he thinks Kendrick is staying at to try and confront him, but of course he can't get in.
Lock off every door in the Noble Hotel. Man even cut everything off. Man bought everything. He's a bitch.
And at the same time, Drake announces that he'll be going live on stream with Kai Cenat at 7 p.m. on the very night that Kendrick Lamar was supposed to perform in Toronto. Now, mysteriously, even though the Kendrick concerts happened, the Drake live stream with Kai Cenat, for whatever reason, did not happen. But just a couple weeks later, conveniently the week before Pusha T and his brother Malice released their 15-year comeback album, Drake releases the lead single, or what was supposed to be the lead single, to Iceman, What Did I Miss, with the whole live stream. Again, all of this stuff, I guess you could say, could be a coincidence. But then, in my opinion, the weirdest of all came when J. Cole released his Birthday Blizzard mixtape right before the fall off. On that tape, Cole seemed like he was maybe alluding to the beef and making some remarks that seemed like they could have been aimed at Drake. Bars like, "For crumbs, dumb guys sold their soul to Lucian." Or how about bars like, "Guys are cheating and I won't excuse it. If I said it, then I wrote it, stupid." We all know who's the poster boy for Ghostwriters. There were a bunch of other subliminals. You guys can check out my full breakdown of that mixtape. But about a week later, we got J. Cole's album, The Fall Off, right? And sure enough, the night that the album comes out, literally at the exact same minute that the album's released, Akademiks gets on his stream and premieres 2 different Drake snippets, insinuating that they're for Drake's new album Iceman, and of course on those snippets Drake is dissing.
Oh man. Wait, what y'all talking about? I hear something?
When I say free slime, I
Wait, hold on. I don't hear nothing. I don't hear nothing. 5 in the chat if you heard some shit.
On a side note, while I see everyone on the timeline right now with the release of this Baby Keem album saying that Kendrick just needs to diss people for shock value and he can't really sell records any other way, you do realize that 90% of the 50 songs that Drake has released since this beef ended are him taking shots at random other people, right? Like, the only one he has not really directly come out and dissed since the beef is Kendrick, and we know why. He's a little scared, but he definitely makes reference to Not Like Us, the whole battle, all that, on these snippets that Akademiks was premiering, and the timing just seemed off. Keep in mind, like, over the last few months, Grand Wizard chat guy Akademiks' little minion was roped into a lawsuit with Drake that kind of seems like investigators believe Drake and this Grand Wizard guy are in cahoots to push narratives on social media and push bots, of all things, on social media. So just seems kind of odd that Akademiks, the night that J. Cole is releasing this project, starts premiering new Drake music where he's discussing the beef, right? Almost like he's trying to take attention away from J. Cole's big release. And we saw every time Kendrick had a big moment or the Clips had a big moment, Drake was right there doing something in the same exact window of time. And I personally put on my tinfoil hat. Again, I'm not a big conspiracy guy, but all signs were pointing that he was about to do the same thing on the night of Baby Keem's album release. Now, why did I think that? Let me explain to you guys. It actually all starts with Baby Keem's album announcement. See, there's this account on Twitter called Insider Hub X, and again, I'm really not a conspiracy guy, so I kind of cringe at myself giving into this type of stuff, but there's too many factors that just kind of align for it to not make sense. So this guy, before Baby Keem even announced the album, he had tweeted out, "Baby Keem album is getting officially announced this week. Insider Hub leaked it first." This was days before Baby Keem actually announced the album. I believe they also predicted or announced early the Don Toliver album that just came out. I could be wrong on that. Then they also announced that Kanye West and Travis Scott would be releasing a collab album. And while we didn't get any release of that, we did get the announcement that Travis and Kanye would be doing a show together in a couple months from now. Enough time for them to actually, cook up and release this new project. Oh, never mind. This dude was completely right. Sorry, I misunderstood. So he tweeted out, Kanye and Travis Scott are coming, but then he also tweeted out Hellwat, which is the name of the festival that they're performing at. And this guy tweeted this out days before it was actually officially announced. So obviously he's got some sort of industry ties and is getting this information from someone connected to the industry. He's not just guessing this stuff. Spicy. So he said, before any of them even announced their albums, nevertheless, right? He said Don Toliver, Baby Keem, and then Drake. That's the order of how these albums are going to get released. Now, at the same time, we get the McDonald's and Drake collaboration that came out a couple days before the Baby Keem album. And if you guys have been paying attention to the Iceman episodes, you know that he goes to these different actual locations and live streams in them while premiering new music, right? For a rapper who makes all this fast food music, what better way to celebrate that than to actually premiere this new fast food music on a live stream at a fast food restaurant where you can simultaneously promote your new fast food menu items, right? I mean, it's a pretty big deal to get a McDonald's meal, so I figured Drake would be doing some sort of promotion for it, right? No, we haven't heard him say a single word about it.
I study
lawsuits and fast food music
for a living.
So that's why I kind of thought, his Iceman episodes, they didn't end with a completed story. He's going to have to finish that storyline somehow. You're going to need the 4th episode. It's been months since the last one, and now you have Baby Keem releasing the album. Given Drake's history of trying to stomp on Kendrick's moments, now J. Cole's moments, Pusha T's moments, I thought he was about to do the same here with Baby Keem. He also posted this picture to his Instagram and said it's about to be freezing, and obviously the album's called Iceman. But eventually this Insider Hub Twitter account that was correctly predicting all those other things, someone had asked them if Drake was going to drop an Iceman episode on the night of Baby Keem's album, and they said, not true whatsoever, but a slim possibility that he does something in promotional nature tonight after the Baby Keem album. So I do think Drake is most definitely plotting his next move and trying to revamp the rollout for Iceman. I mean, on a side note, have you ever seen someone, do a rollout for an album, then completely pause it or stop it, almost cancel the damn thing, and then like 6 months later re-emerge with a new rollout for the same project? It's kind of crazy, but I thought that there would be no better time for Drake to get his name back in the conversation than to crap on Baby Keem and Kendrick Lamar. Further emphasize the whole round 2 notion by dropping something on the same night as Baby Keem and Kendrick and seeing who gets more hype.
I study
lawsuits and fast food music
for a living.
I still think Drake will come with something this week, strategically the same week that this Keem album is released. But again, that's me kind of just theorizing. But why would also make sense? Because you might be like, Drake has nothing against Keem, right? Or nothing to do with Baby Keem. Or he's not even in the same league. They don't make the same type of music. Drake is obviously way bigger. Why would he want to try and sabotage this younger artist, right? Well, Baby Keem and Drake, they actually have a pretty interesting history. See, if you guys didn't know, way back in 2019 when Baby Keem released his first, I guess you could call it his first big album, Die For My B, Drake had actually caught on to Keem very early. Like, I didn't even know who Baby Keem was before Drake was already mentioning him in interviews and stuff. He had said Die For My B and Young Thug's album were both his 2 favorite albums of the whole year.
I think Thug had the best album of the year. Yeah, actually, between him and Baby Keem, Die For My, is that those are my 2 picks for album of the year.
And it seemed like a collaboration was in the works. And I mean, on a side note, I had said this in a previous video. It makes so much sense now looking back on it that Drake wanted to collaborate with Keem, because if you followed what he was doing around then, he was kind of just collaborating with these up-and-coming artists to try and incorporate their sound into his own world strategically, because obviously once he adopts that sound once, he can continuously use it on future projects, right? We saw him do this with Afrobeats, with Wizkid, trap music with Future, etc. And I mean, look at songs like Honest by Baby Keem, right? That kind of alternative pop melodic type of sound. Keem himself has said he's been very inspired by Kanye's 808s and Heartbreak. Same thing with Drake. Keem's sound would have been perfect for Drake to incorporate into his work. So again, it was kind of strategic that Drake wanted to collaborate with him early on. Now, if you guys also don't remember, Kendrick Lamar never publicly co-signed Keem until 2020 when Keem had announced he'd been signed to PG Lang. They were keeping it tight under wraps on purpose. I mean, in the new documentaries that Keem actually released in promotion of his new album, Kendrick Lamar had done an interview where he said that he wasn't, going full nepotism on Baby Keem. He wasn't treating him like he was his cousin. He was treating him like a regular, everyday person, right? Because you have to build your own identity in this game. You can't come up off the heels of someone else and expect to have longevity. So Kendrick made sure Keem was ready. He made sure that, he refined his craft. He posted songs on SoundCloud, saw the reception before Kendrick actually, gave him that stamp of approval in public. Why I bring this up is because the irony in it all is that Drake had actually publicly gave Keem a big major look before Kendrick ever had. I'm talking in the public eye. In the private eye, Keem and Kendrick had actually been collaborating behind the scenes. Keem was doing a lot of production on the Black Panther soundtrack, a couple TDE projects, etc.
When he started first sending me beats and shit, I was like, okay, I can see you do this. And he was really good. So I wasn't surprised at that. What I was surprised when he started rapping. I was like, damn, you actually good at this too. That threw me for a loop because he understood melodies and like patterns more than any young cat that I heard. Like, it's like I got 1,000 fucking cousins, man. Like 1,000 friends that rap and do music and shit. Out of all of them, he was the best one. 14, 15.
But once Keem and Kendrick did collaborate, this is where things kind of took a weird turn. See, so in the beginning of 2021, Drake releases a song called What's Next? And on the original version of that track, Baby Keem actually had a verse. This was supposed to be their first collaboration. For whatever reason, Drake decided to take that verse off the record, and a couple of months later, you get Baby Keem and Kendrick on the song Family Ties.
I told you that I was a mess, okay? I get out of bed and get dressed, okay?
Now, with this song, you get a couple interesting bars towards the end of Kendrick's verse, where he's talking about smoking on your top 5 tonight, and obviously we know that's in reference to Drake, because back in like 2017, Kendrick and Drake were having a whole subliminal back and forth about who's really got that number 1 position. In 2016, on the song Grammys, Drake had said top 5, top 5, top 5, no debating. By 2017, on the song Galchester, Drake had said, I know I said top 5, but I'm top 2 and I'm not 2. Kendrick had tweeted something subliminal around that time period, basically laughing off the fact that Drake thought he was in the top 2. And here you got him talking about smoking on your top 5 tonight. Now, the track closes off with Baby Keem rapping, number 2 is DMing my girl, that's cool, I don't ask why. He's on a track with his cousin Kendrick Lamar, who is professing he's the greatest and talking about smoking on top 5. Baby Keem is talking about top 2, DMing his girl. Who else could top 2 be? Besides the Toronto Taylor Swift, right? In another song off that same album, The Melodic Blue, Baby Keem even says, see that girl right there? She effed OVO. So number 2 is DMing his girl, and he's talking about a girl right there who effed OVO. I think he was trying to say Drake is top 2, right?
I'm trying to find me a that no one knows. You see that right there? She fuck OVO.
Now, we wouldn't hear from Keem for another 5 years after this album, which is crazy. Like, this new album, Casino, it's 5 years in the making. And there was a really interesting theory floating around that it was actually due to the Kendrick and Drake beef that Baby Keem was experiencing these delays in his project. Now, I spoke about this in my Baby Keem documentary, again, link in the description, but I'll play you this like 5-minute clip from that because it explains the whole lore behind this theory. So if you already watched the documentary, you could skip like 5 minutes ahead, but if not, this is some really interesting context as to why we potentially had not heard from Baby Keem for many years. Now, during this theory, when I initially wrote the script, I write bullet points. I don't write anything word for word. So there must have been a typo as I was like quickly typing. And there's this producer by the name of Jahan who plays a key role in this whole theory. And I kept pronouncing his name as Janu. And for the life of me, I can't remember why I had been reading off bullet points that said his name was Janu. I must have like typed out the name and made a mistake and then it just autocorrected. I couldn't tell you for the life of me, but if you hear Janu repeated multiple times, I really mean this producer by the name of Jahan. So enough about me rambling here. Let's get on to the theory. I'll let old rapaholics take it away. During the beef between Kendrick and Drake, Baby Keem was radio silent. The only thing he did was actually like a tweet that basically said Kendrick Lamar is the type of guy to vanish as the bus passes. But that was already a year ago. The last time we heard from Baby Keem was on Twitter, also over a year ago, when he tweeted, "What's new?" But what if there's a deeper reason why Baby Keem has not released music in the last 3 years? There really might be. Spicy. And it might stem back to that Kendrick and Drake beef, but not for reasons you guys might think. Now, shout out to the YouTube channel Geek About It for bringing this theory to light. I'm going to try to remember to leave a link in the description to their channel in this video, but I highly suggest you guys check out their channel. They do amazing videos and phenomenal research on everything hip-hop related, and they really unpack something that makes a lot of sense as to why we've seen so many delays in Baby Keem's project. So basically, I mean, you guys might have assumed, oh, Baby Keem was just silent so that Kendrick Lamar can have his moment, have his victory lap, right? Well, Kendrick Lamar has most definitely finished that victory lap. We can confirm that, right? Like, he dropped GNX again over a year ago. He went on the entire GNX tour, which wrapped up in December, which is approaching 2 months ago. I also don't think Baby Keem rolling out an album while Kendrick Lamar was on that GNX tour would interfere with the success of that tour in any capacity, right? And Baby Keem actually made an appearance at one of the dates. That was the first time we had saw him in many years when he stepped on stage again with Kendrick Lamar, I believe in around May of 2025. But ultimately, we hadn't heard new Baby Keem music, and it didn't make sense that the only reason why we hadn't heard Keem music is because, you know, he wanted to step out of the spotlight for Kendrick. Sure, in 2024, that excuse makes sense, but by 2025, Not really. If anything, Kendrick Lamar bringing Baby Keem along for the ride, these massive moments like the Super Bowl or the pop-out, that would have brought more eyeballs onto Baby Keem. It would have been a better look for the both of them. But whatever. There's a bigger reason, all right? So keep in mind that Baby Keem was working quite heavily with Kendrick on his Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers album, but another individual who was working on that album pretty heavily was Boy Wonder, Drake's right-hand producer, who was actually a big fan of Kendrick Lamar before the beef popped off.
You know, To Pimp a Butterfly, I think you tweeted or said in an interview that it was a dream come true to be on that project. Why in particular?
It was a dream come true because Kendrick is literally one of my favorite artists. So just to work with him and be a part of anything he was doing was a pleasure and was an honor.
But what's interesting here, and again, shout out to Geek About It for bringing this to light, is that Boy Wonder had actually brought in the studio with him a new producer that he signed named Janu. And Janu, sorry for mispronouncing his name, he had contributed production work on Kendrick's song N95, one of the singles off Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Around this time, he starts forming a close friendship with Baby Keem. And again, he's signed to Boy Wonder, right? Janu eventually is invited to join Kendrick's Big Steppers tour, specifically to help Baby Keem work on his new project. Throughout the tour, Baby Keem had frequently tweeted about recording songs late at night on the tour bus and often mentioned Scott Bridgway and Janu. You could tell they were definitely locked in on a creative process. But then the beef happens, right? And even though Boy Wonder was a fan of Kendrick, was happy to work with him in the past, obviously at this point, we're in a different circumstance, and Boy Wonder can be seen all across the timelines taking shots at Kendrick Lamar. Now, this directly impacts Baby Keem. Why? Because, again, Janu, who ended up becoming one of Baby Keem's closest collaborators over the last few years, is now caught in the middle of this entire thing. Ultimately, his loyalty lies with Boy Wonder, whose loyalty lies with Drake, right? Baby Keem has tons of music with both of them. I mean, he even put out a short film that was tied to the Melodic Blue where he previewed 3 new songs, and 2 of those songs were actually produced by Boy Wonder. But Boy Wonder is not clearing any music for PG Lang at this point in time, and that's pretty obvious, right? I mean, Scott Bridgway, one of PG Lang's producers, had previously given beats to Playboi Carti, and Drake had recorded on one of them, and due to his affiliations to PG Lang, Scott had to end up not clearing any of the songs that included Drake.
Carti got a song with Drake. It's fire. I love it. It's not gonna be on there. No, Drake ain't on the album, my nigga. It's not gonna happen.
So it's likely that the same thing goes for Janu and Boy Wonder, right? Any music they have with Baby Keem, it's likely not coming out. It's not getting cleared. And that might mean that Baby Keem had to go back to the drawing board and completely restart the creative process because a large portion of it included this producer who was closely affiliated with, again, Boy Wonder, who's closely affiliated with Drake. All right, now we're back to modern day Rapaholics. All right, the album has already released, and funny enough, Jahan Sweet, which is his actual name, it's not Janu, he actually does appear as a producer on the song I'm Not a Lyricist. So it seems like some of the work that he did for the project actually did make it on to the final cut. But all this and more were a bunch of the different reasons why I potentially thought Drake would have no problem trying to step on this album release, right? Let alone the fact that Baby Keem is Kendrick's not just cousin, but also technically his successor, right? The person next up with the torch in that TDE PG Lang family tree. Now I'm seeing people say Baby Keem sounds like Andre 3000, 2 different Kendrick Lamars, old Baby Keem and new Baby Keem, all on this one album, and I couldn't agree more. And speaking of Kendrick Lamar, of course he's a guest on this project, but before we actually dive into the project, I thought there was another interesting conversation to be had around Kendrick Lamar. If you guys were paying attention, you saw at the Grammys that he was sporting this weird kind of bandage on top of his hands, which led people to speculate that this was the start of a new Kendrick Lamar era, right? Because obviously with Watch the Party Die, the album cover to that was, these beaten up rusty shoes. It almost looked like he had went to war. Well, now he's got these bandages on his hand that have no blood on them. They look like they're in perfect condition. It's almost like, I'm ready to fight again, right? So aside from that, I mean, we haven't got any actual hints to a new album, except for that one thing, the bandage on the hands. But you have DJ Big Mac Akademiks.
Those 3 Big Mac
Akademiks
are for me.
Who is saying that he is on good authority to basically tell the world that Kendrick Lamar will be dropping an album at some point this year. And Akademiks doubles down and says it's not just that he is probably going to drop one, it's that he needs to drop one. Because if we're in the dot era, a couple features on a Baby Keem project are not going to cut it to certify that this was really the era that he ran things, right? And I think there's an interesting conversation to be had here. So listen to the hungry henny hogger, and then let's get to the truth.
Kendrick, I believe this is a make or break year for him as well. If you ask me, I've always said ever since Drake came out, he's ruled every year, right? I want to say post 2010. He's been, if you ask me, the MVP of rap, okay? And we're talking about big leagues of rap, because I know some of y'all are like, well, didn't you say Youngboy was MVP last year? Or Carti or whatever. He's been the MVP every year, except for 2017. I gave that to Kendrick Lamar. That's the year he dropped Damn. And I'm going to be honest. I think for 2024, I think Kendrick was MVP as well. For 2025, obviously didn't put out much music. And that's what I'm saying. Like, we're talking about a top level league here, because obviously people could say Youngboy, you know, that he's like my personal pick overall. But Carti as well, because Carti pretty much had the biggest hip hop album that year. But I would probably say, you know, we could say Kendrick's reign is 2 years, like 2024 and 2025. Now, I personally believe when people keep mentioning a dot era, for a dot era to exist, it has to be 3 years. Like, every great rapper has had a 3-year run where they can't be fucked with. Whether we're going from 50, arguably longer than 3 years, 2003 to 2007 or 2008. Kanye, I think we're just going to say from 2005 to whatever, or 2004 to whatever, you know? Definitely from 2004 to like about 2012. Like, right till when he dropped about Yeezus, I would say, Jesus, right? That was a great era. Wayne.
Oh, Lil Wayne's just too good. Oh, Lil Wayne's just too good.
I'd probably say, you know, you could kind of stretch years here. Some would say 2005 to 2009 or 10. When did he go to jail? But some might say 2006 to 2009. Whatever the case is, he had like an impeccable run then. Drake, again, you know, I feel like he's just summed up a bunch of different runs. We got 2010 to 2013, and then 2013 to like beefing with Meek, and then after that to the Pusha T. So I think he just had a bunch of runs. And I think for Kendrick, this is just, again, I'm not saying this has to be facts, right? I'm just saying how I look at things when we're going to think about the history of hip hop. For Kendrick to have a run, I think this needs to be an important year for him, because I gave him the last 2 years. Last 2 years, okay, you got it. This year, if he still outshines everyone, I think we could say legitimately for the last 3 years, we're in quote unquote the dot era. But I wouldn't crown it an era if he had one really good year battling, then the other year he toured and dropped an album and we don't hear from him again. So if he drops this year, which I'm under good authority to you know, I'll still say speculate that he has some things up his sleeve, and not just being on Baby Keem's album. So we'll see what he has to do as well.
Now, the thing where I'll disagree is when you're looking at these, you know, massive runs that a lot of rappers have went on, they usually still took around 2 to 3 years in between projects, right? Like, these projects still need to have a shelf life. They still need to live and grow legs. As for Kendrick Lamar, he dropped GNX in November of 2024. Then he took it on a stadium tour, right? That allowed the project to not just reach, a larger audience, but to also build a world around it. This way, when you look back on the GNX era in, 10, 20 years from now, you're not just thinking of the project itself, you're also thinking what came with it, right? The music videos, the tours, the hits, the Grammys he picked up for it, the Super Bowl performance. Almost every major rapper followed this same sort of blueprint, right? There were a few exceptions. Obviously, Lil Wayne during his peak, he was putting out music at astronomical rates, but even with him, right, when you're just talking major studio albums, he dropped the Carter 2 in late 2005 and then the Carter 3 only 3 years later in 2008. And then Rebirth came almost 2 years after that, his next project, in February of 2010. Drake, in the early days when he was actually giving us good albums, he was still taking, a year and a half to 2 years with every new project. Same thing with Kanye West, 50 Cent, Jay-Z. I feel like Kendrick's become like a poster child almost of someone who just is notorious to never drop music just because of the long stretch he took between Damn and Mr. Morale. And you have to ask yourself, even bigger than, just like, everyone says we're in the dot era, but how could this be the dot era if Kendrick's not dropping music? I feel like it's a bigger conversation than just, will Kendrick take the crown from Drake as being like the most popular rapper, right? I feel like there's a bigger shift that's been happening ever since the battle. And yes, it does involve Kendrick kind of spearheading the culture in a different direction, but I think, and I'm hoping that it really requires, a concerted effort, especially from the next generation, to rebuild or restructure the values of the genre from what we had seen, in the earlier years of the 2020s. What do I mean by that? Well, for a lot of the 2020s decade, we were seeing TikTok kind of heavily dominate the charts, right? Like if you go back and look at the, biggest rappers or the biggest songs from rap artists in the early 2020s, it was a bunch of either one-hit wonders or artists who ended up falling off because they were catering to those TikTok algorithms.
From the top, make it drop.
Ironically, Baby Keem is someone who kind of deviated away from that strategy, and I saw someone post that this is the first Gen Z classic album, this new Baby Keem Casino album, and I think that's a hilarious way to put it, but it's actually kind of scary, right? Like, if you look at everything this new generation of hip-hop has brought to the table, can you say there's a classic album from any rapper that started rapping after, let's say, like 2017, 2018? Anyways, I'm going on a tangent here, but I do think that the quote-unquote dot era is not just some, fabricated thing, and in order to actually, I guess you could say, like, jot down in history that Kendrick had a run as dominant or as impactful as a 50 Cent in his prime, or Eminem in his prime, or Lil Wayne in his prime, or Kanye, or whoever. In order for him to have had that, does he need to be dropping a project every single year? Not in my opinion. I do think that we're missing like a big Kendrick feature run. He's never gone on one like a J. Cole or a Lil Wayne. Don't get me wrong, he has great features, just no run of like 2-3 years where he's like going on a new feature every week and just going crazy on it, right? So we haven't got that. And in terms of a new album, I would say if by like middle of 2027 we hadn't gotten anything from Kendrick Lamar, then you could start having conversations. But until then, I feel like it'd be hard to forget the impact that GNX had, not just in 2024, in 2025 as well. It was the highest selling rap album of 2025. So just to show you how far that impact actually stretched, right? I think the success of this Baby Keem project is also a reflection of Kendrick Lamar. Like, you want to talk about we're in the dot era. That means when Doechii has a dub, that's kind of reflective of the Kendrick umbrella. Same thing with Baby Keem. When he wins, it's almost like Kendrick winning, right? The same way when Lil Wayne went to jail and Drake and Nicki Minaj were on all these features, doing all these hits, it's like that was a reflection of Wayne. So I say that to say, like, this Baby Keem album being phenomenal, that just stretches out the dot era even longer and further. So all you OV hoes who are, crossing your fingers that Iceman will come and eradicate the run that Kendrick has been on, think again, all right? Spicy. Because this Baby Keem album, guys, this is a really incredible album. Like, right off of first few listens, in my opinion, this is already, like, easily deemable as his best work to date. It runs for 37 minutes. I love how short and concise the project is, straight to the point, 11 songs. Baby Keem produced on every single one of these records, and the production is one of the highlights off this project. Absolutely phenomenal. And because Baby Keem started his, entry into music as a producer, I think that that's the reason why he understands how to make something that is sonically pleasing right off the rip. And what I mean by that is when you listen to this album, there's nothing here that feels like, it takes a while to get into. With the J. Cole album, I felt the production was a little bit, I wouldn't say bland, but just very kind of anticlimactic. And for that reason, it took my ear like a few listens to actually adjust and really appreciate that album for what it was. But with this Keem album, like, you get it right off the rip. Everything sounds intentional, everything sounds polished, and it's immediately engaging. Like I said before, Keem on this album opens up more than ever before, and it almost feels like a sonic casino. Like, the feeling you get being in a casino, all the different colors and flavors of games hitting you, all the different rewards, the dopamine boosting at 1,000,000 miles an hour. That's kind of what you're getting with the, all the different voices that Keem is using on this project, all the different beat switches, the different transitions from like a high energy song to like a low energy type of song. It also kind of feels like the entire time you're listening to this project, like you're kind of riding in the car with Baby Keem as he's switching radio stations or skipping songs, or in some instances just like opening up to you about his life and what's going on in almost like a journal entry type of way. And even with all the beat switches and the contrasting sounds, everything still blends together perfectly. Like, nothing feels messy here. And Keem has said in past interviews, especially when addressing, the industry plant rumors being tied to Kendrick Lamar, whatever the case is, he's always felt the need to introduce himself first, right? Die For My B, that was a project that had 0 features on it. He only started working with Kendrick once he actually established himself and established his own base. And he said he did that intentionally because he wanted his fans to, fall in love with him and his story. And with that, you get that reflected on this project as well, right? Like, all the features on this album come across as very subtle. Like, no one's there to steal the show or be overwhelming. Instead, they kind of just add like a layer or texture to Baby Keem's world here. They enhance the atmosphere without kind of pulling the focus away from him. So the album opens up with the song No Security. It's on this song where Keem sets the tone and introduces the core themes that run throughout the entire album. Everything from loss, complicated family dynamics, survivor's guilt, the pressure of being labeled, the next up in hip-hop. Remember that Keem gave a speech while premiering this album saying that a lot of these stories that he's telling used to feel embarrassing, but then they became empowering. And you could see why right off the first listen of this song, right? It gives a full snapshot front to back of his come up. It starts in the current moment and then it moves all the way backwards to earlier moments in his life. He talks about becoming famous, right? And having an uncle pass away and then feeling that regret or survivor's guilt that he was able to make it out, but that he didn't use his resources to better help his uncle. He talks about growing up and, wanting something deeper. He talks about becoming famous, getting all this money, and then his mom looking at him like as if she's going to the bank. Money kind of muddying the waters and complicating his relationships. And beyond that, Keem, kind of bearing his soul to the world, like being a product for the world to consume. And he lets you know, with that being said, he will be opening up about a lot of heavy concepts about his life on this album. He raps, "I'm a product to the world. It's some things that I ain't told. Like when my mama walked me around with no shoes on in the cold. When I was dying for my B, my mom was sleeping in a tent. Going back and forth to jail. Should I bail? Where can I vent?" So many layers in these bars, right? Because obviously he's saying when I was dying for my B, my mom was sleeping in a tent. That means like when he released the project, Die For My B, his mom was out there homeless, right? And she was back and forth from jail. When he says, should I bail? Where can I vent? It's a double meaning, because is he saying like, my mom was looking at me like a bank, everyone in my family kind of using me for money. Should I be bailing her out? Should I still be supporting her when, she keeps falling down these bad paths? And bail also, meaning the literal term of bailing on her. Like, has she mistreated me too much? Have I dealt with too much that at this point maybe it'd be better off for my mental to just kind of disassociate? And so overall, with the intro, Keem here, he's positioning himself as someone who, definitely feels chosen, feels gifted, but also feels burdened by a lot of unresolved pain. And it sets the tone for this album being, I like to call it like a voyage through vulnerability in Vegas. Now on the next song and on a lot of songs off this project, Keem does a really good job at, kind of integrating these very heavy concepts into these very fun, upbeat records. Like it's really a weird duality, but it works amazingly. And sometimes it's so simple, right? Like on the next track, Casino, you get this hard-hitting beat. There's a beat switch in the record where he starts going off and he raps bars like, Raised by the wolves, I grew up casino. My guy, I barely had parents. I tell the ant all my secrets. That's really my twin like I look in the mirror. Simple bars, simple way to deliver a message, but still a hard-hitting message, especially when you're talking about like people are going to be mosh pitting to this song, right? Or how about when my grandma died, I hit the 95 to get some closure. I wouldn't say I took it well. I walk around bipolar. I think I cried a million times. I'm human. Effing sue me. These days, I barely had a heart. I just accept the truth. You would think these lines would be, said over some like sad guitar, right? No, it's over some hard-hitting trap beat that I believe is produced by Carti, same producer as Euphoria. And already he's coming in with a bunch of new pockets, a bunch of new voices and sounds, and especially, on the subject matter side of things, like really coming in with a whole new level of vulnerability that we hadn't heard from Keem. But if you want like vintage Keem, like Die For My B era Keem, you'll get that on the next track, Birds and Bees. This has a bouncy, kind of cartoonish video game style beat, and he uses his classic baby voice, but it really kind of feels a little more matured, if that makes sense. Like, again, he went from baby Keem to teenage Keem on this project. Like, the baby voice, don't get me wrong, it's still very animated, but it's a lot more kind of melodic than before. And the hook on this one, I find it's fire, especially with the vocal sample that's kind of layered into it. If you're a fan of early Keem, you'll love this song because it feels nostalgic, but evolved at the same time. Then you get Good Flirts, which is the first Kendrick feature on the record. Keem here comes in with another brand new voice that sounds like a mix between kind of like A Boogie with the Hoodie and Jeremiah. Like, it's very R&B centric. And drop a comment, the synths on this beat, like there's something here where I know he's sampling an old record. I can't put my finger on what song it is. So if you guys can snipe it, drop a comment on what it is. But yeah, Kendrick's verse on this song is funny for a couple reasons. Now, I posted this verse on Twitter and everyone was either saying Kendrick has to diss because he can't garner buzz any other way, which is ridiculous. And then on the other end, people were saying, why are you trying to make it seem like Kendrick is dissing anyone here? And I definitely don't think he's dissing anyone here, for the record. He samples Common's song The Light, right? The same one that J. Cole sampled on I Love Her Again off his album from 2 weeks ago. I never knew a love like this. And obviously on that record, Cole was talking about his love for hip-hop, right, and how he fell back in love with hip-hop, and how hip-hop even made two of his friends beef with each other, referencing Drake and Kendrick. Kendrick's not talking about hip-hop here. It's just kind of interesting that, a couple weeks later, Kendrick is using the same refrain that Cole just used. And you also had Kendrick reference Young Thug. He raps, to be honest, guys love love too. Hell, I even gossip with my girl like I'm Young Thug too. And I don't even know if I'd call this a diss, but it's absolutely hilarious. So if you guys don't know the backstory here, essentially, Young Thug had been locked up for several years between 2022 and 2024. And he had been on the phone talking to Mariah the Scientist, his girlfriend, talking about different, figures within the industry, specifically Kendrick Lamar. Ironically, he wasn't actually talking to his girlfriend about Kendrick, but instead to someone who was seemingly a manager. Basically, they wanted to get Kendrick on a Young Thug album in 2023 to try and sabotage Gunna's album release date. And they couldn't get that Kendrick verse, so Young Thug instead went on a whole rant against Kendrick Lamar on this jail phone call that then leaked in late 2025. And this is Kendrick's response here, right? Talking about, his love interest and how he, also gossips with his girl the same way Young Thug did on those jail phone calls. And maybe I'll play you guys that, Young Thug Kendrick jail phone call somewhere around here.
With Kendrick.
I hope he do it.
So do I.
He don't take no money, do he?
No. He wouldn't do that. But think about it. He does so few verses. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's not just doing verses. Like,
right. All that fake. I ain't getting no rapper song shit. I don't be liking them type nigga like that. These niggas get too big. I don't want to do no feature. Why? Why you don't want to do no feature? Why when you want to do a feature for a superstar? You really got Lil Dirt calling you for a song. Lil Baby. Dogg. Real superstar calling you for a song. Why wouldn't you do the song? We lit, nigga. We going number 1, too. I don't be understanding that type of shit. Supposed to be a nigga who bless a nigga. That's why them niggas will never be bigger than Drake ever in life. Put somebody on. It's okay to run you a few hundred M's up, but who you help though? It'll never be bigger than Buddy. Buddy gonna do it right. Buddy with everybody. You know how many niggas like Drake chain? How many niggas can take care of their family because of Buddy? Just like straight which Kendrick got there and put him on. You're a superstar. You don't ran up you a few hundred M, but you ain't putting nobody on though. You probably with me, Wham, Dirt, Savvy. You probably with us. You probably calling us like, hey man, I want y'all young niggas on my album. I'm on some player shit this time around. I'm on some player.
So, all in all, I thought this Good Flirts record was a good record, but definitely not like one of the best Baby Keem and Kendrick Lamar collaborations. I'd prefer to hear them on something higher energy, and that's exactly what we get on the song House Money. Now, this was previewed on the first Boomin documentary that Baby Keem released in promotion of this album, which I suggest you guys go watch. It really gives a lot of context to how Keem was actually raised, who he was raised by. Like, this was a great rollout just because of how much detail Keem put into actually telling his story front to back. Now, Kendrick on this record, he just comes in for a short little hook. Honestly, judging by the snippet of the song and just like the build up here, like I was expecting the beat drop to be a little more cinematic or dramatic, similar to Family Ties. The foundation of the beat is absolutely insane, especially with the, opera sample, the hard-hitting kicks, the Kendrick ad-libs in the background. But then the drop kind of comes and it doesn't feel as explosive to how the build-up kind of suggested it would be. I'm Not a Lyricist. This is one of the highlights for me off the album. This is where he really opens up about the struggles of his adolescence within Las Vegas, even almost regretting moving there from Long Beach. On the second verse, this is where Keem starts to literally sound like Andre 3000 vocally, which is insane. Like the lengths that Keem has gone through to experiment with his tone, he uses his voice almost like an instrument. It's crazy. And, this really feels like a diary entry, right? Like he's telling you he's not a lyricist. Meanwhile, this is like maybe the most he's opened up on any song in his entire career. He talks about his grandmother giving him his first keyboard that really got him into music at the age of 12. He talks about getting out of the group home. He talks about alcoholics surrounding him. He talks about seeing his uncle with an S worker. Of course, they're in Vegas, right? Sin City. He talks about the demons of Vegas possessing his entire family, his mother looking at him, trauma in his eyes. They're slurring their words off Absolute Vodka. Really a heavy track. But again, like the way he kind of delivers it between the voices he uses and the production overall, like it makes these hard-hitting concepts feel a lot brighter and in certain ways more digestible, which I think kind of perfectly represents, catering to that Gen Z crowd, right? That ADHD, TikTok type of mind. The lyrics, the subject matter, it's heavy, it's important, but it's not delivered in a way that takes away from the fun, if that makes sense. And speaking of the fun, I mean, the track list does a complete 180 here, going from this hard-hitting track to Sex Money, where Keem seemingly takes us on a trip with him to Miami. Flashy, indulgent, sharp contrast from the, emotional trauma that Keem had poured onto the previous track. But there's an even bigger contradiction here, right? Because on the previous song, he's talking about the trauma that he felt by witnessing his uncle with an S worker. And now he's, participating in hypersexual, raunchy energy, right? And Too Short delivers a verse that kind of just like brings that feeling or that lifestyle to light. And it's showing how all the trauma Keem kind of faced within his life led him down these bad paths, right? And that's highlighted again on the next song, Highway 95 Part 2. Now, this, I think, could be one of my favorite Keem songs of all time, right off the rip. I think by far my favorite song so far off this project. Highway 95, that is a major U.S. highway that runs through California, Nevada, where, of course, Baby Keem was, Oregon, and Idaho. And this song kind of details Keem running away from his problems, running away from the life he was living in Vegas. Now, on the original Highway 95, Keem opens up more about relationship struggles, the women he desired, and it ended with him opening up about not liking one of his mom's boyfriends. And it's definitely a vulnerable record, but like he had said himself, this record takes the vulnerability up to a whole other level. And this sequel feels like that elevation or that evolution, right? There's a beautiful contrast between the bright, smooth production on this record and the very, again, dark themes that he's touching on. He starts it off mentioning that, video games were a temporary band-aid for the pain that he had felt. And we know that Baby Keem had started off actually on YouTube documenting his, Minecraft gaming and all that early on as a kid. He then describes growing up on government assistance, navigating instability within his family. I really can't do this song justice by describing it. This is something you just got to listen to. And again, you'll realize what I'm saying. Like, he delivers these messages in such a melodically pleasing way that you almost, like, if you're not paying attention to what he's saying, you would think he's talking about some upbeat stuff. It's very weird. The flows are beautiful. It feels like you're kind of in the car with Keem on this chaotic adventure, just freestyling over this beat while you're reflecting on your life and the trauma you're facing. It's definitely one of my favorite Keem songs of all time by far. Then you get Circus Circus freestyle. Again, switching up from the, calmer, more melodic or reflective type of song to now a harder hitting banger here, very similar to Casino earlier on in the track list. You get multiple beat switches here again. You get a bunch of different voices. At one point here, he sounds like Kendrick. It's a braggadocious track. It's got a dark beat, triumphant blaring horns, repetitive chants in the background of the beat. Great production all around. Around the 3-minute mark, the beat switches to an instrumental that has a cadence kind of similar to the second beat of Family Ties. And Baby Keem, again, kind of opening up in this like awkward way where he's blaring out these like really painful things that have gone on in his past, but he's doing it on this hard-hitting beat that's like people are going to be mosh pitting to this song, and he's rapping about, not knowing his siblings on his real father's side, or almost dying from the vaccine, or his uncle selling his Xbox to buy crack. Like the roller coaster ride you're going on here, between the flexing and then the chaotic family revelations, like it's crazy, but it's amazing. You also get a couple bars that could be a dig at Drake when he says things like, "You want abs, do sit-ups." I mean, guys, we know who, probably went and got the BBL enhancement on his abs done. Also, the use a woulda, coulda, shoulda guy, who. That is the sound that an owl makes. Now, that could be an absolute reach, but, it's fun to reach sometimes, right? It's fun to reach. Anyways, of course, the kind of sonic soundscape of this project continues to hit new heights and new volatility when you get to Dramatic Girl, because another complete 180 from the previous track here. This one has like this euphoric, nostalgic feeling, almost like a early 2000s like electronic or alternative kind of pop song. Keem shifts from, using the baby voice on the hook to then a more straightforward singing voice in the verses. And again, it's just kind of showing like in these 5 years, he's amassed even crazier vocal range than he had before, and he already had 1 million different voices. Now he's got like 1,000,010, right? And I think Maxo Cream is also on this track. This is another highlight for me, just in terms of what I think might have, just pure replay value, just how enjoyable this song just sounds on the ears off first few listens. Like I've already bumped this album, I think, front to back 4 or 5 times. I'm recording this the same night that it released. Like it's 7 in the morning right now. I haven't slept yet, so I'm gonna go to sleep soon. But let's close this whole thing off, because you get one of Keem's most beautiful songs as the outro to this track, the emotional closer, No Blame. This, again, one of his more vulnerable records of all time, and it feels like he might be sampling the keys on one of the songs off 808s and Heartbreak. I forget if it's Heartless or Welcome to Heartbreak. I mean, we know that on Scars, his record off the Melodic Blue, he sampled the drums from Kanye's 808s and Heartbreak song Love Lockdown. So I could see him definitely, kind of capturing that feeling or that sound on this project as well. He said in the past many times that 808s and Heartbreak is the biggest project that inspired him to actually do music. And he discovered it at a pivotal time in his childhood where it was actually snowing in Vegas one winter, and the whole album kind of encompassed what he was going through at that period of time. And this song kind of carries that same feeling, right? The track is basically Keem refusing to blame his mother for all the trauma that he's experienced in his life. He acknowledges that she was, walking the streets alone. She couldn't shake the trauma from her own childhood in Chicago. He says he cries and he blames himself for what ended up falling upon them. And just some really devastating storytelling here, right? Like things that you would have never thought Baby Keem had gone through based off his previous albums and the subject matter within them, right? He recalls being just 7 years old, waiting in pajamas for her to come home after she promised she would. He reflects on, police getting involved, restraining orders, CPS showing up, cigarettes making the house feel like it was haunted, substance abuse during her pregnancy. He describes hearing that his mom had died from his grandmother. And then he questions himself like how he's supposed to go on and live without her. And this is Keem as a child, right? Having to question these heavy things. And he repeats the line, "I run away on Mother's Day," which we saw in more detail on the song Highway 95 Part 2, where he details actually running away. And by the way, I think it's actually the keys in the song Amazing by Kanye off 808s and Heartbreak that are sampled here. I could be wrong. Again, I'm recording this at 7 a.m. the night that the album dropped, so on whosampled.com or Wikipedia, whatever, like you're not seeing any of the actual samples that are credited. But we'll find out eventually. All in all, though, this album feels like a coming-of-age project for Keem. Like, he feels like he's finally ready to kind of bear it all on the table. Sonically, the whole thing is unpredictable. It's immersive in its subject matter. He's matured stylistically and artistically as well, right? Like, the production is super sharp all across the board. Diverse, but incredibly engaging. The voice switches are very intentional, right? Like, he literally goes from rapping like Andre 3000 to Jeremiah to Kendrick Lamar. The vulnerability, again, is deeper than anything Keem has ever done, and it feels like stepping into his mind as he's witnessing the chaos of a place like Vegas, right? A child's mind growing up in such a chaotic whirlwind, while there's so much pain and suffering going on internally within his house as well. It's colorful, it's painful, it's brilliant all at once, and it could really be the first classic from a Gen Z rapper. I was blown away listening to this thing, but as always, let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next one.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.